What's up, guys? If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Also, please smash that like button on the video and enjoy the show. I want to go back to this, though, because there was something that in my head I put a bookmark in maybe 25 minutes ago.
Okay.
No. You mentioned the Anunnaki.
Sure.
In relation to what we were looking at
Which is
here.
what this is basically right here. Okay.
Yes. So we had talked a bit about the Anunnaki.
Which is the same thing. The Anunnaki is the Sumerian version.
We had talked a bit about the Anunnaki last time, and we hadn't really gone all the way down into it. So if you don't mind, what I'd like you to do is give some people a refresher on what we think we know about them, where the origins are, etc.
So the Anunnaki or Anuna is a very mysterious area to explore. It's one that has a lot of opinions from a lot of different people. And it's perhaps one of the most enigmatic of all concepts to think about. And I really mean that because when you read the tablets about how they're described, it almost comes across as supernatural and fantastical. It's something where we have to look at it in a lens where like, so what are they then? And to give people a little background before I read a little bit here, just to fill in the gaps, is that what we find before the Ararat civilization is that the original Sumerian civilization that came out of the Iraq area that I talk about with Eridu and then Shuruppak as the last city, they discuss very extensively in the tablets this group of Sumerian deities, these beings they call them, that they call them the Anuna and Sumer and Anunnaki in Assyrian and Akkadian. And what that word translates to mean is those from above, those from heaven to earth came, or those from above to earth came. It just basically those who were from this realm or us came here. They stayed, okay? And I don't want to label that as what a lot of people will jump on right now. Like some people will be like, oh, wow, they come here in a spaceship? Are they like flying around space and then they come to Earth? I don't think this is that way at all. Now, I am probably one of the only researchers that has that opinion. I fall in a bit of a crack. Well, I fall in a bit of a crack because you either have researchers who are like all in and like all their physical beings at all these like technical tools and they came here in like spacesuits and right. People either go all in, or you get academics to like, well, they're not actually real. They're forces of nature and the planets, and they're not actually anything tangible. So you get the extremes of both ends. Okay, that's what you get. You get the extremes of both ends because it's interesting that if you learn about ancient Sumerian and the gods that are associated in stories, you find out that there are two very distinctive things. There are the forces of nature, and they're represented by like things like fire and storms, right? Storm gods, and Adad is one of them, right? So, but they're depicted like beings, storms, and forces of nature. And it's really easy to be like, oh, so they're all that. Oh, they're all just like forces of nature and things like that. So that they're not real. But then you get this whole other problem. And this is where you get very few people like me that actually academically look at this in an open mind and study it, saying, well, there are forces of nature mentioned, but there's also ones that have complete conversations and have identities and have roles and do all these physical things and have all these things happen here. So what's going on right now? Well, in the ancient world, they believed that everything had consciousness. Everything. The sun, the earth. They believe that the earth is a living being. They called it Gaia. They called it, there's different names. They called it Ki. Ki was actually one of the original names for earth, believe it or not. Ki.
Who was calling it this?
The original, like some of the oldest tablets we have, like the Enuma Elish, they talk about it like that. But they say it in this very mysterious way where they talk about it in an ancient way where it's mysterious because it doesn't seem at all in even the time period of humanity. For instance, they talk about like planets colliding and astronomical things occurring that they're like part of to like creating an environment that's like they have all these terms they talk about where they seem to be fighting against the natural elements. to almost conquer them is what it comes down as, and it describes it as, okay? And it's very bizarre, and I want to read two little passages here before I discuss any more so people don't think I'm totally crazy, okay? Because this is, and again, this is what it states. And now the Myth of Adapa that came from, translated in 1912 from R.W. Rogers, who originally came out of the Ashurbanipal Library. I want to read this tiny little piece of the front because I think it's going to blow your mind and anyone listening to
Try
this.
me.
Oh, are you ready for this?
Okay.
It's called the Myth of Adapa. Okay, now Adapa, a lot of people believe as well, including me, that Adapa is the original name for Adam.
On what basis
The biblical
do we think
Adam.
that?
Well, listen, you ready?
Okay.
I'm reading direct quotes from the Myth of Adapa. This is tablet 1. He possessed intelligence, his command, like the command of Anu, God. He, Ea, who is a Sumerian god named Enki or Ea, who's one of the patron Sumerian gods. He's supposed to be the creator of humanity, of mankind, according to the tablets. It says, he, Ea, granted him a wide ear to reveal the destiny of the land. Everything's cryptic. Think about everything for a minute in like a cryptic, symbolic way. He granted him vision, Adapa. He granted him vision, but he did not grant him eternal life. In those days, in those years, the wise man of Eridu, Ea had created him as chief among men. A wise man whose command none shall oppose, the prudent, the most wise among the Anunnaki he was. Blameless of clean hands, anointed, observer of the divine statutes. Try to wrap your head around that for a minute. It's saying in this that that Adapa was created perfect, and that he was even more wise than the Anunnaki. It says the prudent, the most wise among the Anunnaki he was. So wait a minute, think about that for a second. It's saying that Adapa, who's a human, he's considered a great sage. If you read other tablets, it talks about how he's considered a sage who was part of the Upkalu, who traveled around the world to teach. Okay, that's what he was. He wasn't a king, he was a sage. And it says here that he's the most wise among the Anunnaki. Wait a minute. So he's an Anunnaki? So what does that make us? It starts to unveil layers to try to understand this. Now let me read one more little piece to even expand this further. This comes from the legend of Etana, which is another set of tablets after the flood when they relowered kingship again during the same time as the Ararat civilization, I believe. It says here, they planned a city. The gods laid its foundations. They planned the city of Kish, the first city after this deluge in Iraq. Same time period though, okay? The Ajiji founded its brickwork. Let him, Etana, be the people's shepherd. Let Etana be their architect. The great Anuna gods, ordainers of destinies, sat taking their counsel concerning the land. The creators of the 4 old world regions, establishers of all physical form. So, those are two completely different tablets that discuss the Anunnaki in mysterious ways, and also that we are basically them. So what does that mean for a minute, right?
Do we have any archaeological evidence of Anunnaki?
We have more than you could ever imagine.
I mean, literally of...
Right, the Ashurbanipal mural, countless others.
No. Are there any weird remains found that could point to them being Anunnaki remains, for example?
Well, human remains don't last very long, first of all. And secondly, I think we're looking in the wrong place. I think we need to look at the ancient lineages of some of these kings and why they lived for so long and ruled for so long, and why so many mysterious people like Methuselah, Book of Enoch, and Enoch himself, they just constantly describe it as them living like 600, 700, 800 years or more. Like in so many different places too.
You talked about that.
Not just like the Sumerian and stuff, right? It's from Hebrew texts, Gnostic texts, Sumerian texts, Babylonian texts, Egyptian. It echoes this concept that we used to be something that we're different now. We used to be taller. We used to live a lot longer. We used to have connections that we don't seem to have any longer. And that's, I think, the whole point of the stories I read you of the flood, on how the Noah figure was preserving some kind of a seed of mankind. Because I think it's what divided us from being more animal-like. So if we think of what it means to be Homo sapiens sapien, and these connections we have in who we are, it has come to the attention of a lot of people, and it's the possibility that that bloodline is what disseminated to create the gifts in what we are today. But what it gets back to what we originally read, because it says that Adapa was the wisest among the Anunnaki, which means that we are the Anunnaki. And what's interesting about that, though, is that we are mysterious and we have all these gifts and we're powerful, but it seems like we don't remember any of it. And we have only bits and pieces. Like if I'm going to go, give an example. This is really easy. Everybody knows this. If I'm going to go call you and I pick up the phone and I'm like, God, I got to call Julian Dorey. I got to set up another podcast, right? And I'm like about to call and I put the intention out there. I'm going to call Julian Dorey. You're really going to do it. You can't play with it. This is how it works. You can't be like, I might do that. If you set your intention on something like, I'm going to do this, and you pick up the phone, you're going to do it, a lot of times the person on the other end, and I know this happens to a lot of people, they'll be like, whoa, why did I just get a thought of Julian Dorey in my head? And then the phone rings, and then it's you calling, or me calling, vice versa, right?
Yeah, the weird subliminal messaging.
What are you doing there? What's happening there? Break that down for me.
I think about that a lot.
It's because we have telekinesis. We have gifts within our mind and energy, within our consciousness, that are not fully unlocked and understood. It's like we forgot all those things, and then we're trying to remember them and unlock them again like they're dormant within us.
All right, bring this back to Anunnaki now.
Well, we seem to have had all these divine gifts, and we were this certain type of individual, and it's discussed how it was almost some texts like the Book of Enoch consider like the Nephilim, like the cross between them and giants. They call them like an abomination. It gets into this concept and idea that we were created based on like the Gnostic texts, like the Nag Hammadi scriptures. If anyone who reads that, the Secret Book of John, it describes how this creator being in there is jealous of us, and discusses how it wants to throw us. His powerful being, which I think is one of the Anuna, he wants to throw us into like it says the lowest form of matter as like a punishment for us, because there's a jealousy inherently in who we are. But go back to that I just read. Remember, I just said, a wise man, the prudent, the most wise among the Anunnaki he was. What that means is that we were created to potentially be greater than them. I think we are them. I think there's even a possibility they're somehow related to us in the future.
But you're saying Adapa is human, but more the connotation there is that he's more perfect than the Anunnaki.
Which is where the jealousy came in originally, because it's saying that we were created, which is the Adam and Eve story.
Which would mean they're human, though, too.
No, which means we're them. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
But I don't.
So there's no separate. That's what I was trying to get.
So
at.
what
There's
are
no
they?
separation.
Let's get down to the core of what they are. Then I think they're us, but like a million times more advanced. I don't. What you like, for instance, let me give you an example. George Smith, the greatest translator in history, that literally cracked the Sumerian code. He wrote a book called The Chaldean Account of Genesis, and in that book, he summarized his entire life study. It's literally his life's work. And at the end of the book, he has a conclusion where he summarizes, as someone who's read more tablets and studied more than anyone else in the world. And he summarizes on his thoughts about the Anunnaki. It's really wild, actually, at a time when academics would never even touch it or talk about it. And this is the 1800s. Maybe that's why he was able to do it. But I encourage anyone to read the very end of the Chaldean Account of Genesis, and I've saved it and highlighted it all in my book, and I read it all the time. But he basically says that the only thing that makes sense to him about the Anunnaki is that they come backwards. He says this words exactly. He says they seem to come backwards and forwards in time, in Earth's time, for specific reasons.
What did he mean by that?
That's all he says. And he goes on to say that he doesn't necessarily believe the King's List because they're too long and it's like beyond our comprehension to
How would
add
they
it up.
come backwards and forwards unless they were
Time
traversing
travelers.
the multi? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for watching the video, guys. Please hit that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.